Hi guys. So welcome. We were all just discussing how things would run today. It would be pretty informal, and we have a small group today, but that's not a bad thing. It can be very intimate. We can have like open forum kind of style for this. We did not know that term 5 had an exam on Monday, so we apologize if this is interfering with anyone studying, and we understand why a lot of people have not showed up, but that's fine. We're recording today so that we can have we can upload this on our YouTube channel, and we'll go from there. So yeah, how we're going to do things today. My name is Sharnice. I am one of the founders of IMGs Connect. Aleijah and Noelle are also founders of IMGs Connect, and they recently passed their step 1 exams. Congratulations. We are going to just have them present a couple slides. Lindsay, give you guys applause. A couple slides that they'll go through briefly, and then it can just be like open forum where you guys could ask questions. As they talk, you guys will realize that you need some form of like support and knowledge about this entire process, and it's like never ending, literally like up until the day of the exam. So yeah, we're here for you guys, and right now we're going to start.
Okay, hi guys, my name is Aleijah Foxworth. I'm 1/3 of the founders of IMGs Connects, and as my wonderful friend and co-founder Sharnice just said, Noelle and I are here, and thank goodness, we're so happy and so proud. We both passed our step 1. I think we actually took our exams like within 1 week of each other. And yeah, again, we do want to apologize if this does interfere with term 5 studying. We were not aware of the exam scheduling for SU. But it's a good thing though. We are going to record it, so everything that we're going to talk about today will be available to you guys on our YouTube channel. And here's Noelle, so I just want her to introduce herself for a little bit, and then I will go ahead and start the slideshow.
Hello, my name is Noelle, and I am the 3rd co-founder of IMGs Connect. You've already met my lovely friends Sharnice and Aleijah. Like Aleijah was saying, yes, we just took our step last month, and thankfully we both passed. We took it like a week apart. It was wild times. So glad it's behind us now, and happy to share what we're going to be discussing today in our presentation with you all. So hopefully you can feel a little bit better as you get ready for your own dedicated.
Thank you, Noelle. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and you guys just let me know if you can see. All right, perfect. Okay, so this little presentation, Noelle and I both worked on, and at times, like I feel like we will piggyback off of each other, because I don't know if anyone else knows this with our IMGs Connect family, but the 3 of us, we've been friends since basically even before we started medical school. So we've been studying for a very long time together. And there were many times where, and we'll talk about this later on in the slideshow, where we had to adjust our study habits with each other, and we would ask each other questions constantly. And that's really what step studying is. It's a very rigorous and tough exam, but it is absolutely doable. And one thing that I would say is my most important piece of advice is your support system. And I really could not ask for a better support system than you two. So I hope that you guys enjoy our very, our little slideshow today.
All right, so to get started, we are going to kind of be going back and forth, Aleijah and I, discussing our with the slides, kind of my approach and then how Aleijah approached it. So just out of the gate, this is kind of how I came to tackle words are hard sometimes, came to start tackling step 1. So I did NBME 25 just to start. I didn't even have a schedule yet. I was just like, let me do this fresh out of T5 to just see like, what knowledge is already just kind of like in there and what I need to like unearth, because I'll tell you right now, everything that you need to know for the exam. You just need to review it. And so you have to figure out what you need to review. So that's really kind of what dedicated is for, in my opinion. And this is just kind of a breakdown of how many UWorld blocks I ended up doing. I did a lot of tutor blocks. I'm a big fan of doing the tutor blocks. I think it's a great way to learn because UWorld is just a tool for learning. You really shouldn't beat yourself up about the blocks. And then my study period was around, let's see, what is that? Like close to 3 months, from the end of May to early August. And I stopped studying 2 days before my exam. So I had one full day before I sat the exam where I just did nothing. And you should absolutely be doing nothing the day before your exam. Yeah, and so I took 9 practice exams, all the NBMEs available to me, both the UWorlds and then the free 120. And I made sure to take breaks. I tried to take every Saturday off.
Okay, so I was pretty similar in what Noelle did. I started, I think the 3rd or maybe the last week in May. I can't remember the exact date, but I also did NBME 25 as my baseline. And if I'm being honest, I did not really go through NBME 25 very thoroughly. If there was one thing that I would go back, I would definitely recommend going through all of your NBMEs very thoroughly and understanding all of the ones that you got incorrect, even the ones that you got correct that you had guessed on. As I said, that was my baseline exam. I just wanted to see what my percent correct would be. So that's kind of why I didn't take it as, I didn't really take the score to heart because, as Noelle said, you do know every single thing that you need to know for this exam. It's more so just reviewing all of it, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's a lot of information that you learn in the first 2 years of medical school. You're going to forget things, like you're human. We cannot remember every single thing on command. So I just told myself, even if it's not where I want it to be, even if it's slow, even if I don't pass that exam, it will be okay. I will obviously continue studying. I won't take, the percent to pass probability too much to heart, because I knew that I was not taking the exam next week. So I did that. I did do UWorld daily. I had a total of 77 UWorld tests, but I also started UWorld in my term 5. So I'm not sure if you guys are SGU students, but at SGU in our term 5, after we finished learning all of our new material, which wrapped up in our musculoskeletal neuro, what was the I? MNI. I forgot what the I was for.
Infections.
Yes, infections. The infections portion of all of our new content. Once we wrapped all of that up, we started with our cumulative portion of the semester. So this was their way of like prepping us for our comprehensive exam at the end, and also supposed to be prepping us for STEP, which I am a little bit bittersweet about that. I mean, I do feel like I reviewed a lot of things with those cumulative exams, and doing well on them, I do think obviously helped me as well. But I somewhat feel like it would have been a little bit more beneficial if we had a little bit lighter of a semester. So that's why I had so many UWorld tests, because I started doing UWorld during the semester. So I ended up about 3.5 months of studying. May 23rd, yeah, I guess August 15th. I did not plan to stop studying 2 days before my exam, but I kind of got that from Noelle, and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do it, go with it. 2 days, I'm done. It is what it is. Roughly 10-hour study days. I mean, some days there were less where I would just take a half day, because one thing that I feel like is really important, you have to listen to yourself. If you feel so fatigued and you're like at your computer, you're still doing your UWorld, but you feel like you're just getting stuff wrong because you don't feel like reading anymore, that is a normal thing to happen. Give it up. Put down the computer, take some time away, relax, and come back to it, because it's not effective sitting. There's no point in just like staring at your computer and doing these questions and getting them wrong when you know the information, but you're just fatigued. You know, your body is telling you you need a rest, you have to listen. I really did try to take one day off every single week. However, towards the end, there were definitely probably say about at least 5 or 6 weeks where I did not really take a full day off. And I would not recommend that. You know, it was kind of my anxiety getting the best of me, but I felt so much more focused when I would take a day off. You know, I don't know, it's very hard to take the advice that you give. I will say that, you know, sometimes I'll say like XYZ, I know that these are things that are good for studying and good to keep yourself refreshed, but when you're in the situation, it's a little bit harder to take the advice that you give. I did take 10 practice exams. I did NBME forms 25 through 30, the UWorld self-assessment 1 and 2. I did the old and the new free 120. I did not redo any exams. I did plan to do that if I was going to continue studying, but in like the last week up to my exam, once I had done my old free 120, I decided like, that's it, I'm taking this exam. So I didn't end up redoing anything else.
All right, so this is kind of an example of what my study schedule looked like for content days. And so just to know, like getting a little ahead of myself, we're going to talk, both Aleijah and I are going to talk a little bit about how we studied on content days, which is more of like just pure review. You're just reviewing the material that you're feeling weak on, or that you have like demonstrably like seen that you're weak in at the moment versus from your practice questions that you're doing daily. And then also how we do like our practice exam days, because you will have both that you need to incorporate into your schedule. It would be madness to try to do content and a practice exam in the same day, so don't even think about it. So yeah, so to start, I would try to get up early. You know, that step exam is at 8 a.m., 9 a.m. sometimes, depending on where you are, if you're lucky. So it's best for you to start your day as if you were going to take the exam that day. So there's like, you know, as tempting as it is to be like, oh, I'm in dedicated, I can, you know, I haven't slept in since whatever time because of term 5. No, just keep it going. Just get up, get your day going. So I would try to start doing my first UWorld block by 8 a.m. Again, I was usually doing tutor mode. I was usually doing a mixed block, which just means it was pulling from all unused topics. And then obviously, well, I would do it untimed. You can do tutor and timed, but I found that method was a little bit like confusing because of the way UWorld is set up when you do that. It's like, it's just really awkward personally. So I would just do a tutor mode untimed, and then I would review it as I was going along, because obviously in tutor mode, you know exactly how you're doing each question, and I would thoroughly read the explanation, even if I got it right. And that's something else I would say, even if you get the question right, you should still be reading the explanation to make sure that the reason why you got it right is not because you guessed correctly. You should be knowing, you should be seeing in their explanation support that you were already thinking of for why that was the best choice. Then I would take a break. Then I would get into my next block, rinse and repeat, eat. Please do not forget to eat. And then I would try to take time to, if there were questions that, yes, try to get in the habit of reading explanations, even especially like no matter what the question is, right or wrong, read the explanation. Very good habit to get into. Then I would try to just go over my missed questions and really get a feel for like, okay, am I seeing a pattern? Are all the questions that I missed in my blocks today like cardio related, renal related, you know, like, is there clearly something jumping out at me that I'm like, okay, something's missing here? And then from there, that's what I would focus my content review on for the day, either by watching videos or going back to slides from term 5, and then just kind of targeting my attack of the day in that method. And then I usually try to not go, I think Aleijah had said on her thing that she had around 10-hour study days. I was trying to do around the same between blocks and like meals. You see, I give myself a lunch hour. Okay, my lunch time is sacred to me. So I was trying to be done, you know, no later than like 8 p.m. or whatever. But obviously that varies depending on, you know, sometimes you get in a flow and you just are like, I'm gonna study extra today. And you just give yourself a loose guideline, some structure, but like don't be so rigid that you like cut yourself off when you are on a roll, you know?
Very well said, Noelle. So this is my sample schedule for like my content day. I would, you know, try to adhere to my schedule as much as I could, but like Noelle said, like don't be so rigid that you don't feel like you can break away from your schedule. So I kind of spent like 3 days making my entire schedule, like when the semester ended, and I did not like stick to it 100% in the end. So again, that's just reiterating. When you realize that you need to change something in your schedule or change something in the way that you're studying, don't be so, I have to stick to this method or I have to stick to this schedule just because that's what you planned out. It's okay to like, you know, like break away from that and do something else if you feel like it's going to better suit you. So I would get up pretty early, do my morning prayers, and then I would go to the gym for about an hour around 7. And then once I got home, like I would shower and have something to eat. Then I would try to start studying by 9:45. Sometimes that would be 10 or 10:30 realistically, but I would do my first U-Road 40 block. In the beginning, when I first started step studying, I was doing it completely system based. So I would start out like 1 week I did neuro, and 2 weeks I spent on biochem. So I started with the topics that I struggled with the most or that I didn't really remember enough content from. And I do think if you have or you plan to take about 3 months studying, then I do think that's a good idea. If you plan to try to do like 5.5, 6, maybe even 8 weeks of studying, I would not recommend doing system-based just because it takes a lot of time. You, of course, are focused only on one part of the body, whereas when you're doing completely random mixed blocks every single day, you're being exposed to so much more content. So you cover more in a shorter period of time. I would then, you know, review my year-old block, and then by about 12:30, I want to take my break for lunch. And I would usually take about an hour 15, just kind of depends like how I was feeling that day. Then to come back by no later than 2, like I would start watching supplemental videos. In the beginning, I used a lot of Boards and Beyond. I absolutely love Boards and Beyond. It's such a great like refresher tool because the lectures are very in-depth, and it does go like almost identical to first aid. I think that he does follow the first aid book. So even if you're reading something and like you just don't really understand it, it's good because he goes in depth and he explains why, you know, this is the reason it is or what have you. In the end, I didn't use Boards and Beyond as much just because it's very time consuming. And, you know, when you're getting close to the exam and you're like, every minute is precious, I just didn't really have the time to use Boards and Beyond, but I would watch supplemental videos of Boards and Beyond. I did watch Sketchy a little bit. I've never really been the biggest fan of like watching videos. I prefer to read a textbook, but when I was reviewing stuff that I just had, you know, so many issues with, or I realized that I was consistently getting certain types of questions wrong, I would watch a Sketchy or Picturized video on it and simultaneously annotate my first aid book. So if there was something that, you know, they mentioned Sketchy that I need to connect dots with, I would like go to the page that maybe they explain the disorder and disease. And if there was something related to it, I would also write down the page number that it was related to as well. So I could review that and the page that it was related to when I was doing my review at the end of the day. I then take like another break at 5 and I'll just go for about an hour. Then at 6 o'clock, I do my second New World block and review that. And then about 7:45 to 9, like I would just kind of fill in whatever I needed to do. If I needed to watch more videos or I needed to read more textbooks, and I'll cover the textbooks that I use if I need to do that or read my notes. That's what I would do in that time. And then at the end of the night, about 9, that's when I would like wrap up my day, and I would do a half of UWorld that was mixed, and I would start to review it. Sometimes I would leave the rest until the next morning, but that's kind of how I started to study. In the end, I did, adjust it to what I felt like was best of me, but this was what I started out with.
Oh, could you go back, Aleijah, for a second?
Yes, let me see.
Okay, yeah. So just before she moves on to the next slide, I just wanted to point out, so obviously you can see Aleijah and I's schedules are pretty similar. Like we're both getting like an early start. She was starting it with a little bit more like kind of, self-care, fitness and that, which bless you, girl, going to the gym because I haven't seen the gym in a while. But anyways, but I just wanted to point out, so you have to do what works best for you. So you can see that Aleijah would split her UWorld between the day and the night. And I had mine back to back because that's just what worked for me. For me, it was like, I just want to get these questions done because I don't want to do them, but I have to do them. So if I get them over with, then I can just, focus on whatever I need to review. Whereas Aleijah did a little bit of like, okay, I'm doing questions now, I'm reviewing them, I'm doing some content review, and then I'm kind of like going into a new block. And it's almost like, I'm sure that gave her like some insight into like, okay, what has stuck from my review during the day. And, you just have to know yourself. We're probably going to sound like broken records saying that throughout this presentation. You have to know yourself. You have to trust yourself to do what's best for you and your schedule. So, whether you're doing all your UWorld in the end of the day or the beginning of the day, or you're splitting it, if it's working for you and you can see that and you'll be able to tell that by how your practice exams are going and your blocks as you go, then stick with that. So yeah.
No, that was a really good point. And I probably should have put in a slide too of kind of how I adjusted my schedule towards the end, because yes, I did start in the beginning, like breaking up my UWorld blocks, but by the last like month and a half, I started trying to simulate the exam as much as possible. So I would get up early and do all of my UWorld blocks. Like I was doing maybe about 120, sometimes 160 questions a day. So I would do all of those in the morning and review them after, because I knew that I had to start mentally preparing myself to sit for 8 hours basically.
Wow.
I mean, yes, we do take little breaks, but essentially you're sitting for an 8-hour exam. So I knew that I need to start building that stamina. So there was times where I would do like 2 or 3 blocks in the morning, take a break, and then go back to another block. And the days that I did my practice exams, of course, I tried to simulate the exam as much as possible. I just did them straight. Like I didn't take 2-hour breaks in between because I knew that I wasn't going to have that when I took the actual exam. So yeah, definitely, I tried to kind of give myself grace in the beginning, but towards the end, I knew that I need to change around my schedule.
Yes. And to answer your question, Lindsay, at least for me, UWorld was the only question bank that I used. Like I know that Boards and Beyond has questions on there that you can do. Like for each video that he always has like a small handful of questions that you can do just related to whatever you're watching. But I really hadn't done anything like that since term 5 when I was watching some Boards and Beyond videos, just for helping me understand the stuff we were learning in class. So UWorld was my only Q bank during dedicated. Aleijah, was it for you?
Oh, okay. So yeah, I didn't really use anything aside from UWorld. I mean, I did also use some of the Boards and Beyond's questions. Sorry, Lindsay, I can't really see the chat box just because I'm sharing my screen, but I didn't really use anything aside from UWorld in terms of questions. There was a period in time where I used some from Usmle RX because our school gave us that subscription, but for the most part, UWorld was what I used.
and I'm sure you might have heard this before, Lindsay, but if not, I mean, UWorld literally looks exactly like the exam. Like when they talk about how UWorld's really kind of all you need because it simulates the exam, it really does. Like just the look and formatting, they are really trying to give you a sense of what to expect the day of. So that's definitely a bonus to using it as your primary, even if you do use other question banks, just because that's what the test looks like. That whole blue screen numbers on the side is literally what it looks like.
Thank you. That's really good to know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like, I always think it's a little bit funny, like, you know, when you go to take these like tests at these test centers, like, and they have these random old computers that they have you sitting on with their corny little headphones that a million people have worn. It looks a little bit like it looks like a little bit, I don't know what's a good word to say, grainy, I guess, a little bit grainier in person, but otherwise same. Yeah, so okay, on to kind of my study schedule for practice days. So like Aleijah was saying, for a practice exam day, which was really just like that's all I was doing for the day, and I would review it, and I would usually probably spend like half of the next day reviewing it because doing even what's essentially a half test, which is what these practice tests are, is exhausting. So I would wake up early, I would do the first block, and I always did my practice exams on time. You do have the option to do them self-paced, like that's something you can select, at least I know on the MBME website, if you do yours that way. Obviously people have like offline MBMEs that are the same forms that you can do, but I personally just bought them on the website, used them there, because it was just helpful for me. So I always did mine timed, and then I would try to give myself breaks and just kind of get through the blocks without rushing, but get through the blocks within, you know, a similar timing to what I would expect to do on the day of, where I'm realistically not really taking more than like 10 minutes between each block, and then like a slightly longer lunch break, and then just kind of trucking on, because it's a long test and nobody wants to be at the testing center all day. So I wasn't trying to, you know, be sitting at my desk all day at home. And yeah, and then I would, after I took it, after I completed the last block of the practice exam, I would take a nice long break to just like decompress, eat, go for a walk, just do something besides think about it. And then I would review it. And I personally only reviewed my missed questions. I think there might have been like 2 practice exams towards the end of my dedicated period that I reviewed the whole exam in its entirety. It's really up to you if you think that you want to do that. I will say I agree with what Aleijah said prior, that as far as the baseline exam goes, I do wish I would have like reviewed that a bit more, like the whole thing. But then once I was doing other ones, I just did miss questions until towards the very end. Because the MBMEs are also very similar to the exam. Obviously, you won't see the exact same questions, but you might see questions that are similar in structure or like in content. And so getting familiar with your MBMEs, and at the very least, you know, reviewing your missed questions on the MBMEs will be helpful for like just preparing, because you'll be like, okay, the way they worded this, they do that a lot. Like they just repeat themselves, even if they change what they're asking. And yeah, so I would usually my goal is always to review half of the exam that day, and then I would just spend the rest of the evening just relaxing. Oh, we lost someone. Okay, but yeah, so this was pretty much my practice exam schedule.
So my apologies. I meant to put a practice exam schedule for how I would do my practice exam days, but it was pretty similar to Noelle, so I'll just kind of like go off of her. I did wake up pretty early, like 6:45 to 7. I would like try to have my breakfast and everything. Those days I would usually skip the gym just because I wanted to get started and get into the practice exam as soon as I could. As Noelle said, so there are some like unofficial copies of the NBMEs, the updated versions, of course, like Form 25 through 30 floating around. And by all means, you know, like I am not going to discourage anyone from doing what is like more financially responsible for them. But I would say if it is possible to pay for the exams and take them on the official website, that would be my suggestion, just because the information that you get, you know, like they show you what content areas and what disciplines you scored lower in, higher in, or at the same average as everyone else who had taken that exam. They also show you like the percent probability of how you do if you took the exam in 1 week, which, you know, getting closer to the exam, like I did use that as like, you know, try to keep myself positive, like, okay, I got this. Also, of course, it tells you the percent correct you got, so that way you don't like have to score it yourself and potentially make any mistakes or anything like that. But if it's possible, I would definitely say to use the ones on the official USMLE website. So I would try to start my first block by around 8:30, maybe 9 the latest. And the NBME, it's a little bit different because on their website, they do 4 blocks of 50 questions instead of the 40 block questions, which that was one thing that I thought was a little bit strange. Being not on the real exam, you have a maximum of 40 questions per block. But that's neither here nor there. I don't make the exam, so I just thought that was a little bit strange. But yeah, I would do my first block. I would take like maybe 5 minutes, 6 minutes in between, walk around, get a sip of water, then come back, take my next block. After my second block, I usually would take a little bit longer of a break, like an hour. So I was just so fatigued. Towards the end, I wasn't doing that, but in the beginning, yeah, I definitely took like an hour or an hour and a half because it just felt like so many questions. And then I tried to be done with the exam no later than like 3 o'clock the latest. And I would take about 2 hours to just relax, review. After that, yeah, after I would took about a 2-hour break, that's when I would review my exam. And my goal also was just to review about half the exam that evening, because after doing 200 questions, like you're going to be fatigued. You're going to be very exhausted, you know, especially when you're just getting into your dedicated, you're starting to realize how many questions you have to prepare yourself to take. So yeah, definitely. I was just like, if I can get through half this exam, I'll be fine. And then after that, I would retire by 8 o'clock, the latest, call that a night, and I just finish the rest of reviewing in the morning. So these are my resources and my recommendations for my dedicated. Of course, number 1, first aid. When they say every single thing that you need to know is in that book, no, they really mean it. Like there's some UWorld questions I remember I would go through, and the explanation, it felt like they word for word took it out of first aid. Like I would go to the page that you know, popped up in my notability for whatever topic it was, and it felt like it was exactly word for word what they were reading or in the explanation was from first aid. So definitely first aid. The most updated version, of course, because I say that just because there were some questions that I had on my new free 120, which I know that we've been saying old and new free 120. That basically is, there was a free 120 form that was going around. I think it was released in February of 2021. And then they updated, of course, because, you know, the exam changes and everything. And there was a form that was released in June of 2022. So I took both of those, the older one and the new one. And there were some things on the new one that was not even in my book, my first aid book. I have the 2021 first aid, so I'm not sure if it was in the 2022. I don't know anyone that has a 2022 yet, so that's just my best advice, is to get the most updated version that you can get your hands on. The PDF is what I use. It worked fine for me. I mean, absolutely understand if you're someone that needs to like have a physical book, but there's loads of I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but loads of like the free PDF just floating around, and we have some on our drive as well. So I also use the BRS textbooks. Now I know that Charnice and Noelle can vouch that I am a BRS textbook lover. I absolutely adore the BRS textbooks. There's so many. There's BRS Pharm, biochemistry, pathology. I use pathology almost every single day in term 4 and term 5. I worked really hard to understand that content in term 4 and term 5, because I knew that those were the type of things that I really had to understand, you know, to progress and like do as well as I wanted to do in the upcoming terms and the upcoming years. So I used BRS, and I prefer it so much more than Pathoma. It's very similar in Pathoma in that it's in like that outline format. However, I feel like it gives a little bit better of a description. There's also questions in BRS. I used that when I was in term 4 and term 5 studying. I love BRS so much. I feel like I should be a brand ambassador.
You should.
I did use Pathoma, but I use that in the beginning, and then I kind of just like transitioned to as needed whenever I like needed to look up something that I couldn't find like in my notes quickly, or I felt like I need a better explanation. I would just check Pathoma. UWorld, of course, I use that every single day. That was my go-to for my question bank. I use Boards and Beyond, but as I said before, I use that in the beginning more, and I transitioned to as needed at the end. I use Sketchy Pharm, but so if you go to St. George University in term 4 and term 5, when we started going over pharmacology more in depth, we would get these like long compilation of all the pharm that we need to know for each module. So with those documents, I would download them and I annotated them. So like I had a pretty good study tool with that already. I would use those to study my pharm and review, as well as my micro, because I also made micro charts, and that's kind of how I studied those two. I did use Picturize and sometimes Sketchy Path, but as I said, like I used my handmade lecture notes or the charts that I made in term 4 and term 5. I did use Anki in the end. So I've been told like Anki has a really big learning curve and XYZ. Like I didn't use it as one of my main tools. However, I do feel like this exponentially increased my scores in the end. So the rapid review in first aid, it's like the last, I don't know, maybe like 10 pages or so, and maybe not even 10 pages. I know that there's like 5 for like the diseases, and then there's a couple pages for the high yield pharm. There's this deck, and we'll link it on our drive as well. Basically, they took like each one of the rapid review clinical presentations, and then on the backside of the card, they would like link or put an image of the exact first aid page where they talked about it. So I used that to really like run through those high yield disorders and disease, make sure that I knew them in and out. Like if they even gave me half of that explanation of what the person had when I was reading that question, I would already know what it was, so that I didn't have to like take too much time to think about it. And I also started whiteboarding. You can see my whiteboards in the back. I was whiteboarding so much in the end. I use that. I also wanted to add for the Anki, I also used the Pathoma deck, the chapters 1 through 3, because that cellular stuff is pretty high yield. Of course, I can't like talk directly about my exam, but there was definitely some things that I went through those questions so quickly because I had reviewed them right before, like in the last 2 weeks before my exam. Like a lot of the cellular stuff, the neoplasia stuff, that stuff is really high yield.
All right. So These are my resources that I use a lot. So yes, definitely. So I kind of have a separated essentials and then some bonus ones I found to be very helpful. So UWorld, of course. Again, I'm an advocate for tutor mode. I just really like I just felt like it was very helpful for me in terms of like retention and learning to just kind of, do a question and then like immediately have the feedback of got it right, got it wrong, and then be reading the explanation. And then boards was great. You see I have the little note, write down everything he says. If you haven't already annotated your first aid, which is like my kind of segue, you need to start. And since Boards and Beyond does go along with first aid, yes, Team Sketchy, Team Sketchy, I'll get there. Boards and Beyond and first aid are really great, and using them together will definitely help you know all that you need to know. First aid pretty much has everything, but somehow I just feel like Dr. Ryan sometimes will just say little things and I'm just like, why didn't they write this particular sentence in first aid? Were they just feeling lazy that day? Did they think that it wasn't like quite high yield enough? And it's like those little things will sometimes be helpful when you're doing UWorld questions and you're just like, wow, I remember that from boards. So yeah, I really liked that. And then Dirty Medicine on YouTube. Watch Dirty Medicine on YouTube. You need to watch Dirty Medicine on YouTube because all of his mnemonics are so helpful. And then honestly, even just for content review, like, I mean, what he does is content review. But he kind of is known for like having mnemonics that help you remember the content. But even just for content review, like just to watch it and get a grip on something that maybe you've learned by the time you finish term 5, you've learned it like 3 different times with increasing information. It might finally click, or it will click in a new way that you're like, okay, now I remember it more easily when I encounter questions asking about this topic. So I can't recommend that enough. As for bonus, bio stuff wasn't super high yield. But for me, I found myself being frustrated at like the idea of not necessarily remembering like how to distinguish studies from each other and the subsequent like little formulas that go along with them that they sometimes want you to do. So I found that Randy Neal, MD is like his channel name on YouTube. He was really helpful for that. And he actually takes you through practice questions. I don't know if he gets them from NBMEs or what, but he will literally talk you through why this is the answer and like how to remember the formulas. And I found it very helpful. And then, yeah, Sketchy Medical. If Aleijah is an ambassador for BRS, I am the Sketchy stan. I have been telling Aleijah and Sharnice to watch Sketchy and that I love Sketchy since, I don't know. I got on there real early in the med school game, and I was just like, this is the stuff. So yes, glad that you're already down for it. Okay, so to kind of wrap up, so these are my so I'll be sharing my tips, and then Aleijah has tips. Top 5 tips for step 1: don't be afraid to postpone. Full transparency, I postponed my exam like 3 times. Okay, one of those I was really resistant, but I was sick with COVID and there was like no way that I was going to be in any shape to like take the test, so I just had to do it. But the couple times before that, I was just like, you know what, I could try to take the exam, but if I fail this exam, I'm gonna cry. So so rather than risk it, I was like, let me just give myself another week, another 2 weeks, so I can get some more content in and feel more steady. So don't be afraid to postpone. Don't do too many practice questions daily. Personally, I never did more than 2 blocks a day. I I know Aleijah had mentioned that towards the end she did like 3 to 4 blocks a day, and I think that that's definitely totally fine. For me, I was like, ain't no way. They're already gonna make me do 7 or however many blocks. I can't even remember how many blocks it is the day of. I was like, I'm not doing no. But know your own limits. I definitely recommend not doing more than a practice exam equivalent in a day. So, when Aleijah said she was doing 3 to 4, that's still like a practice exam. You know what I mean? She wasn't exceeding that. She wasn't out here trying to do like a whole full exam at home. Like, nobody should be doing that. Don't do that. Yeah, don't get hung up on passing. Do take breaks daily, weekly. Don't miss your meals. Take your half days if you need to. If you're like, wow, I read this Euro question like 5 times and I just still don't have an answer because I don't want to be doing Euro right now, take a break and just, try your best. That's all you can really do at the end of the day.
So my first number 1 is definitely take your breaks. Really, really take those breaks. Use one day you need to just like reset. Don't study any material because you inevitably will get burnt out. This is a very long exam and it is absolutely doable, but let's be realistic. It's exhausting. So take your breaks. Definitely be confident in what you have learned. As I said earlier, sometimes it is easier to give advice than to take it. I am someone who really needs to take that advice. Like, there comes a time where you've studied so much and maybe you're not into the score block that you would have wanted to be. And of course, be smart about that as well. But if you are in a good place, be confident in what you have learned. I do think that confidence on exam day plays a very big part. You just really need to you need to trust yourself. You need to remind yourself how far you've gotten and how much you do know because you know it. My number 3 is one that I constantly, and Noelle can attest to this, I would constantly have to like help her to like help hammer into me. Stop comparing yourself to other people's scores or progress because no one else is going to take that exam except you. Tom, Dick, and Harry that's in your cohort, they're not going to sit that exam for you and write it for you. You need to only be comparing your scores to yourself. If you've improved, I remember Noelle said this to me, if you improved only 1 score point on your NBME, it's still an improvement. Take that as an improvement. Like, it's gonna be okay. I would also say make note of the things that you consistently get wrong and review that nightly. So my whiteboards behind me, those were things that I had gotten wrong at least 3 times already. And that was stuff that I realized that even though I'd reviewed it in first aid, like there was still a reason why I was getting it wrong. So I would whiteboard that. My whiteboard, I would look at it every morning and every night. And that was the things that I knew that I really need to hammer in. And that was my way of making sure that I got those topics grounded. And again, like Noelle said, postpone if you need to. I think I postponed my exam unofficially probably 5 times, honestly, because I hadn't booked it until like the first week of August. And then once I did book it, I had postponed it twice. So before then I had decided on a date, but I just didn't choose a date yet. So postpone if you need to. There's nothing wrong with postponing. It just, you will know if you need to postpone. And then these are just my little tips for exam day. So the days before the exam, like I said, I didn't plan on taking 2 days off. I just planned on taking that 1 day off, but definitely study very lightweight, do passive review, just go through like my whiteboard was basically the only thing that I studied. I didn't do any questions because I knew that I wasn't going to have time to thoroughly review them. It didn't make sense. The day of the exam, I would recommend like you wake up, you have a good meal, you give yourself time like to arrive to the center. You just like listen to whatever makes you calm and route to the wherever your center is at. I made sure to pack a lot of snacks and lots of fluids. That was the most important thing to me. I didn't really like have a big lunch or anything like that. So I would say, pack something small because the thing is like your heart is racing that entire day. Like I didn't even really have time to think about like a full course meal or what have you, but also keep bring a sweater in case like you get cold. So wear something that can keep you cool, but also warm at the same time. And before I got there, like I mapped out how I wanted to take my breaks. I did 2 blocks each time, and then I took like 5 to 10 minutes. After my 4th block, I took about 35, maybe 40 minutes, I'm not sure. Because you start out with 45 minutes of break time, but depending on how much time you have left over from each block, that adds into your break time. So I had a little bit of break time left over by my 4th block, and I just took quite a bit of time because I wanted to like mentally reset. And my biggest piece of advice is try not to hyperfixate on the questions. After that exam is over, let that go. Like there's nothing, thinking about it, Googling it, that's not going to change what is on that score report. Leave it alone, because like our brains tend to hyperfixate on the stuff that we contemplate, like we weren't sure if we got it right, you know? And then if it turns out that you got those questions wrong, then you're going to start thinking like, there's no way I passed this exam, I got XYZ wrong. You're not going to remember the stuff that you undoubtedly got right. So I would definitely recommend leave the questions alone after the exam. You've done questions for weeks and weeks and weeks on end, leave it alone. So with that, that is the end of our presentation. And I know we only have Lindsay left, but Lindsay, if you'd like to ask any questions, or Noelle, if you want to input anything else in, then, please feel free to do so.
I think I would just reiterate your last point of trying not to hyperfixate on the questions, because the way I was beating myself up over like 2 questions after the exam, it was not funny. I was like convinced, I was like, damn, maybe I failed this, because why did I think that this one question that happened to have a picture on my exam, I'm not gonna say what it was, but basically there was an image, and I was like, I saw it and I felt so confident. I was like, it's this. And then afterwards I was like, it was absolutely not that. What the hell is wrong with you? Like I basically Googled the image or something akin to it for what I put as the answer. And I was like, oh no.
Listen, I had a nightmare about one of the questions that I got wrong, and I was so annoyed. Like I was dreaming of this question. I was like, why would I put that? Because I knew what the answer was. And I was like, no, maybe it's not that. Maybe it's not that.
Like step 1 will really put you through it. Like you will literally be like, wow, I just sat that whole exam, like go me, no matter how it goes, at least I made it through. And then you just go keep yourself up at night or get woken up by your subconscious over 1-2 questions. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It's not worth it.
It's not. So just try your best. Just be like, give yourself a big hug, pat on the back after you take that exam, take yourself out to dinner or go out with some friends or something, and just celebrate the fact that you did it, and try not to think about it until your score comes back.
Lindsay asked, how are you doing your data tracking, like topics you are doing bad on, questions you get wrong?
For me, when you say tracking, I mean, I just kind of went by like whatever the percentages were saying on UWorld, like for each block that I was doing, it'll have them in order of like the percentage. And I was just kind of like keeping track of what range I was in and whether I was like staying consistent or like dropping down. And like, so say I was getting consistently like 60 to 70% on my UWorld blocks, and then I have a block that was like 50 something, I might take a little extra time to like review that block or review it more than once to be like, okay, what was it about this block that I was not hitting what I've been hitting for the past multiple days? It's like, am I just tired? Like, was this one just heavy on stuff that I'm still a little weak in? And then as far as other data on my phone, I just kept track of every time I took a practice exam, I just noted what my percentage I had gotten on it was, so I could just kind of see in a row like how I was progressing. And that was really my only reference. I didn't really have a detailed log, I guess.
Yeah, I think the whiteboarding was really my only log of like the stuff that I was getting right or wrong, consistently at least. I didn't make note of the things that, like that I had not consistently gotten wrong, if that makes sense. So it was just something that I'd gotten wrong. I just reviewed it. I know, and I should have mentioned this earlier, I know Noelle talked about how when she was reviewing her NBMEs, she only reviewed her incorrects. I did review the entire exam, even the stuff that I got right. And I did it in the same reasons that Noelle did all of her questions for her UWorld. I just want to make sure that whatever reasoning they gave for why the question was right was what I was thinking. Because there were definitely some questions that I had guessed on, and or I used process of elimination, and I wasn't 100% certain about, you know, the reasoning or like why that was the answer, but I knew that it was not A, B, or C, so it had to be D. So I went through everything, but unless it was a topic that I felt like I'd consistently gotten wrong, like the MHC1 versus MHC2, the pathways of how they deal with antigen presentation. That was something that I had to whiteboard out because I consistently got it wrong. And I would always mix up the proteasome with MHC2 versus MHC1. So I was like, okay, I just need to write it down. So I'm tired of getting this question wrong. But other than that, it was really just my whiteboard. I did also, and I've also been doing this like since term 4, for each module exam, I would make like one big note on my notability, and I would like put screenshots of different topics that I felt like I was consistently weak in. So I'd review that before I went to bed. So it just was, you know, repetition. I mean, that's all what this is constantly seeing the material that you need to work on over and over and over again. And that I also felt like helped me as well. But yeah, other than that, that was the only way that I really kept track of anything.
Oh, that reminds me. One thing I meant to say earlier with regards to like practice exams. So I guess this would be kind of a bit of logging that would be maybe helpful for you. Even though, like I said, for the most part, I only reviewed my missed NBME questions, I would, in my notability, while I was going through those, I would literally write down, like for that particular form, like I would make a separate note for each form that whatever NBME practice exam form I was on, separated by block. I would write down every single question in a block that I missed, and I would write down the explanation they gave for why the correct answer was correct, and like why the wrong answer or multiple wrong answers were wrong. And I would like, you know, paraphrase as needed and like put down whatever was most significant to me, so that I had a reference of, even though I didn't obviously have the questions, like I wasn't writing out the questions. I was literally just writing down like the number. So if I wanted to, I could go back and look at the practice exam, because since I did them on the website, you can do that. Like you can go back and review it like as much as you want and look at the questions you missed or the whole thing. I don't know if it's like set for a certain amount of time, but you can do that. And so I would write down the question and write down whatever was most significant to me about like why the right answer was correct or why my answer was wrong, to kind of help guide my brain so that if I saw that question again or something similar, I would know better what they were asking and like how to answer it. Because sometimes it was a matter of like, you know, the answer I chose and the answer that was correct were the only two answers I had left after process of elimination. And it was just a matter of like, you know, maybe I was missing a bit of content or I misread something, you know, so I was just taking notes to kind of make sure I wouldn't do that again. Yeah. So I don't know if that kind of helps with like data, but other than that, I didn't really log stuff.
Lindsay, what exactly, I saw that you asked for the Drive link, but what exactly do you want from the Drive? Because our Drive has like some executive stuff on it. But we do have a folder with like resources and textbook PDFs. I don't know what exactly you want from the Drive. Just let me know and we'll make sure to send it to you.
There was something you had mentioned, and now I can't remember what it was, but you said you were going to put it up on the Drive.
Oh, I think Aleijah said she was going to put something on the Drive.
Oh,
no,
I was saying that we have PDFs of the textbooks,
Yeah.
first aid and stuff like that. We already have, I think we already have 2021 up there, and we have various BRS textbook PDFs on there as well.
I saw the BRS up there, so I'll definitely look through those. And then this presentation obviously will be posted as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I am taking the MNI on Monday, so I'm with Term 5 SGU. So I'm not sure how much of this presentation will stick in my brain, and I definitely want to go back and look at your schedules again.
Oh, yeah.
In case I forget.
Yeah, of course. And we'll have this up, and there will also be more of these because I have yet to take steps. So I'll also hold one, and Aleijah Noelle will also join me on that one as well. And then also, I don't know if you know much about us, but I share my YouTube videos on IMG's Connect and on my DES group, Overly Optimistic.
That's where I'm familiar with you from, is
Yeah.
the Overly Optimistic. Yeah, I was originally part
Yeah.
of the August 2020 cohort and had to
Okay.
take a medical leave. So I'm just finishing up the bits that I missed.
Good. It's good for you. It's not easy. A lot of people, like, sometimes a medical leave turns into a leave for forever. So like,
Yeah, glad you made it back.
to come back. Yeah, I'm glad.
I'm glad too. It took me about 7 months to feel normal again. So I'm just glad to like have my brain back.
Yeah, I'm happy you're here. I'm
Congrats.
so happy you're here.
Thank you.
But yeah, so I will also hold one for BSFCR because what I was getting to was that the BSFCR. So I have one for BSFCR. There will be things that I post for you guys for BSFCR and for STEP as well. So we're always here. Like, we're always a good resource if you want to ask any questions. But we have lots of advice to give because we've been through it, and you know, it's our goal to really give back. You know, so yeah, just hit us up if you need anything. Okay.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Of course. Thanks for coming.
Like,
Thank you.
I feel like it was kind of only for me because I'm the only one.
Yeah.